Welcome to One Quick Question with Infomedia, your source for answers to your questions about websites, digital marketing, and more. I'm your host, Carrie Rollwagon. So today we are here with Russell Marbut. Welcome, Russell.
Hi.
Russell is a developer here at Infomedia. He's also my husband. So, welcome. That makes you extra special.
Some might say that.
Yeah. Okay, so today we are going to talk about why is my website loading slowly? So sometimes, sometimes people notice this themselves. Sometimes they get they run a report and they get a report saying their website's running slowly. I guess first of all, why do you care about that?
Well, it's pretty important. People don't hang around if your website's slow. So you don't want to give them the opportunity to bounce,
Yeah. So what's considered like slow?
Probably a couple seconds is max you want it to take.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Second and a half, 2 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. So one reason is, I guess that's just basically the reason people will leave. And then if people leave, then Google sees that and they don't like that. So they're going to not rate you, maybe rate you poorly also.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of cascading effect, I guess.
Yeah. Besides just loading and seeing essentially if it comes up, are there other ways to check the site speed?
Yeah, there's services that you can run your site through. GTmetrix, Pingdom. You can just type in page speed and you'll get several of them. I think GTmetrix is the best. Don't quote me on that, but I want to say they incorporate it. Yeah, actually. I know.
Yeah.
This is,
but
you're recording it, but I think it kind of incorporates multiple sites to get its scores. I will say disclaimer on those, sometimes you get a bad score and it's not necessarily indicative of how fast your site is, if that makes sense. It's not as cut and dry as that.
I think a lot of those, tell me if this is incorrect or correct about this, a lot of those checkers and testers, I think of it as more of a red flag, to check to see if there's actually a problem. I think a lot of times people look at a tester as this means there's a problem, but I think it's more this means look for a problem. And sometimes the problem is there and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, well, what it can do is give you an indicator. If your site is actually slow, you test it and it's loading slow, you can go there and if it's good at what it does, it'll give you an indicator of why it may be slow.
Yeah. And you want to use a tester because even though you may look at the site and maybe it does load slowly, that could also be your internet. It may not be your site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so it's good to use a checker. So let's say we found it loading slowly. We went to GTmetrix or Pingdom or whatever, and we checked it, and it's it is indeed slow. What are some reasons it could be doing that?
Really, it's everything under the sun, is part of the problem. It could be many things or one specific thing. You always want to be optimizing your images.
So what does that mean, optimize your images?
We want our images to look great, but also if you are putting a bunch of images on your site and they're huge file sizes, you're going to have issues with that. And that's a balancing act.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realize the internet only shows at a certain resolution anyway. So to some extent, you're just to some extent, if you give it more information, you're just bogging it down. You're not even showing a better image. Is that correct?
That could be true. Yeah.
But then, so I guess that could be a multiple, like you said, it could be that the file is itself too large. It could be that there are too many files trying to load, too many photos or too many videos. Correct?
Yeah, there's really so many reasons your site could be slow. It could be some extraneous code that you have in there that's running a process that's slowing everything down, or some incompatibility It could be you have a broken link to some asset that's, spinning. It could be, a multitude of things.
Well, I mean, these are pretty good things. Like, is whatever service you use, is that what you use as your first clue to what's going wrong, or do you usually
It will tell you
Okay.
It'll specifically tell you what the problems are. Sometimes it'll say you scored really poorly in this area, and it's like, oh no, I got like an F or a D or something. But in reality, it's not doing. If you fixed all those, it's not a huge difference maker. Whereas some may make a big difference.
So it's like you're saying, okay, in this area, I got an F or a D, so I fix this area. And then maybe that area, you're back to like an A or a B, but it didn't actually impact your site speed because that really just wasn't a big factor. Is that
yeah,
what
like
you're
you
saying?
scored poorly in an area that didn't actually matter that much in the grand scheme of like your site speed.
Okay.
And not to say that it's not good to, correct those things, but, you see you got an F and you're like, oh, this is terrible. And it's like, yeah, you should probably fix that. But that doesn't necessarily mean if you fix that one issue, there could be something else that is.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to be able to look at it and take stock of like what's actually causing your site. And there's balancing to be done too, because there's different ways that it'll score. And for instance, like you can lazy load your image. And basically what that means is it kind of like, it doesn't stop your site from loading when there's an image as it's cascading down and, showing your website. It's not going to stop at that image and load that image and then continue. It kind of pushes it down to the bottom and paints it at the end.
Yeah.
In a way. And if all that happens really fast, you can't even really tell.
But you're still not, the user isn't waiting to do anything on the website because your header image isn't loading or something.
Right. It's still loading everything else. But on the other hand, they have this new kind of score called LCP. And if you lazy load your images, it may make you score really poorly on that paint time.
Mm-hmm. What does LCP stand for?
I think it's something contentful paint. I'm drawing a blank right now, but basically what it means is how long it takes for like your website to show in the browser,
right.
And it may be a better experience for the user, but you may actually score more poorly on that particular scale.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's a balancing act, and if you're going to put a bunch of stuff on your homepage or a bunch of images or sliders, you also have to be realistic on how fast. You have to be careful with that stuff because it's going to load slower the more you put on there. Now you will end up having to take more extreme measures to keep it fast.
Okay. So what kind of extreme measures could you take besides optimizing? Does it matter like where your site is housed or anything like that?
For sure, your server matters. How you cache your site matters. You can use CDNs to load your images, quicker.
Mm-hmm. So there are things that your website service company can help you do to like say, if you're like, no, I really need this. I need all these images. I need all of this going on. Like it just costs a little more money.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. And then if you're not in that position, it's kind of like and your site's loading slowly, maybe like first take a look at like, what do you have going on all these pages? Are your photos and videos optimized? Those be some of the first things to look at.
For sure. I think for a lot of people that are just kind of DIYing and aren't like super knowledgeable about, the internet, I guess you could say. A lot of times they're just putting way too big of images.
Does it matter if those images are not showing on the page, but they're just in, like, say, the media library? If you're in WordPress, does that still slow you down, or is it only slowing down if it's like showing on the front?
Really, it's only an issue if it's showing on the front. The only reason, like, if you filled up your server, that may matter.
Okay.
Like if you started to run into issues, but that's not super common, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Well, so somebody notices their website's loading slowly. First step is to use one of those services, which are free, right? To checking the speed.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of get a clue to what's going on. And there are some ways you can DIY it, but also if you're using Infomedia, we can check into that stuff for you. Correct?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's a balancing act. You got to make different decisions on what you want. And it may, just one last point, you may want to cut down on some of what you're serving up to people on a mobile experience, because a lot of people are going to your website on mobile. So, and their internet speed, because they're on mobile, there's a good chance it's slower. So you may want to look at, okay, we're going to get rid of this slider on mobile, or we're going to load, pull some of these images out, or this or that to streamline our mobile, as much as possible to make sure that site speed is good there.
So you can have a different experience. And usually that's better for customer experience, I think, also. Some people are reluctant to do it because they're like, this is all this cool stuff and we really want people to know it. But I do think it's important to think, like, when somebody's on mobile, they're usually doing something quickly. They're not usually like sitting down with a cup of tea to experience your website. So just cut some of that, get to the point more quickly, and that can help your load speed also.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Let's tell the people about one quick question. Shall we? Do you want me to do it?
I would prefer.
Yeah. Well, one quick question is brought to you by Infomedia. I am the host and creator. Our producer is Elena Harmond. Brad Davis created our theme music. Our sound engineering is by Paul Bryant. And our guest experts are our incredible staff here at Infomedia. We have show notes that include links to everything we talked about today, including the speed trackers, at infomedia.com/quickquestion. And I will leave you with this thought. A real expert helps to clarify, not confuse. So don't take website advice from someone who can't give you a straight answer.